All right, Brynn, back again for
I
more. Are
am
you
ready,
ready?
yes.
Okay, cool. I gotta tell you, I haven't had my second cup of coffee, so this better be good.
I cannot guarantee anything as quick delivery of caffeine can do, but I'll do my best.
Well, if I have to run away and leave you talking for a while, it's probably
Oh,
because I
yeah,
went to
that's
get
fine. I
coffee.
love a good monologue, so we're set.
Okay, perfect. Me too. So today what I wanted to do was have you help me figure out how to redesign a screen. So I know we're here on the account screen. Everybody uses accounts. So I think it'd be a great place to start to just kind of show people that are watching how to move some fields around, how to do some basic maintenance. And a lot of the stuff that we're going to show today, I want to understand what the licenses are that are required. Like, do you need admin rights? I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure you do. So we just want to let people know that. But before we get started, I know one thing that people don't know about Dynamics is that
Yeah,
left-hand menu bar, which is so useful. You can shrink that
yeah,
up. So do you want to just click that little bar, those buttons
yeah.
there? So for those of you watching, little bonus tip here, we aren't really talking about this today, but you want to optimize your workspace so you can use those buttons to like collapse the menu so you can see more of your screen real estate, which is important. Bryn, we're already delivering
Yeah,
value.
10 seconds in.
It's
And
insane.
I guarantee most people
10,
have
10,
not thought of this expand contract before. It's great. It's a nice feature to have, especially when you've got so much data right on one form.
yeah. And if you've got a big, huge screen,
Yeah,
it's one thing, but a lot of our customers use notebooks and they're on the road. So just collapse that
yeah,
bad boy. And speaking of space, so what you've got here is the default sales
yes.
screen, right, for a customer. And personally, this makes me feel very
Same.
claustrophobic. And there's like just a lot going on. Can we just start with just what can we do here? Like, can we collapse columns? Can we make columns different sizes? Can we move things around? What are our
Yeah,
options
that
here?
is a great question. And I will say the options are, I'm just going to say that they are limitless. Yeah, if you can discover
Really?
a limit, let us know in the comments. But you have a lot of
Fair.
flexibility when it comes to working with these forms. So, like you said, the out of the box form, the form that comes when you first get Dynamics, it's pretty busy. There's a lot packed into it. There's a lot of value, sure, but there's also just a lot here. And most people, when you're just getting used to Dynamics, you're just first rolling out CRM, you don't need all of these features really all at one time. You want to kind of have that crawl, walk, run approach where we're starting small and building. And also, every system is going to be different because your company might collect different information than ours. Everybody's going to have different fields that they want to add, move, and just kind of personalize for their user experience. But yeah, there's a lot of flexibility to it in the back end, and it's very user friendly too, which I think when you're talking about making changes and stuff in the admin center and the back end can sound kind of scary, but we'll walk through that process today. And it is actually a very user friendly experience now.
Perfect. And just to clarify, I mentioned this before, but for those of you who are watching, you need to be an administrator, so you have to have permission to
Yes.
do what we're about to do. But for those of you who aren't, you still might get some value from this because then you'll understand what is possible in your
Mm-hmm.
environment. So if you're working with Dynamics and you're really struggling with it, we hear from people struggling all the time. We help them shape up their system. But if you're struggling with it, at least watching this video will show you what you could be doing and what your team could be doing. So stick around. I think it'll be very eye-opening.
Exactly.
So, Bryn, can we tackle just one thing that's bugging
Yes.
me right away? Is that freaking fax field?
Yeah.
Can we just like
Everyone's
I haven't
favorite.
I don't think I don't think I've recorded like is that a default
It
field? Because I don't think I've recorded a fax number for like 20
is,
years
yeah.
now.
Something else you'll love is we also have a fax activity in here if you want to
Nice.
keep track of all of your faxes, not only the phone numbers, but also the activities that you are faxing to. So for sure.
Yeah. That's yeah, and I don't so
Yeah.
let's just as a teaser, just to get started, how do we go in and edit this form? Like how do we find this form? Where do we go? And how do I remove that field
Yeah,
just as a
absolutely. So
starter?
the first thing that we want to do is actually access our Power Apps Admin Center. So there's a link for that we can drop, but it's just make.powerapps.com is where you're going to go. And again, as you mentioned earlier, you are going to need either a system admin or a system customizer security role in order to have access to actually make any changes, to visit this area. So if you don't have those and you do need them, talk to your system admin to see if you can get those.
So, Bryn, I'm already kind of a little bit
Yeah.
lost. So, if I go to
Yes.
make.powerapps.com, how does it know? it's me? Is it just by
It
my
is.
login? So it knows it's
Yeah,
my
so if you're
company?
not logged in already, you can see like I was just in CRM, so I just popped up a new tab next to it. So it remembers that I'm me because I'm in my browser. If you are not
Perfect.
logged into CRM, if you're not logged into, your Microsoft family, it will just ask you to log in with your user credentials and it'll pop you into your environments here.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And then so I get in here and there's a whole bunch of
Yeah.
things going on. How do I know what to pick? Basically, it looks like those apps correspond to the Dynamics app. So there's that thing at the top of the Dynamics which told me which
Mhm.
app I was in. Is that the same
Yeah,
selector, if
exact
you
same.
will?
So these are all the apps, just as you mentioned, that you would see if you hit the little link at the top of your tab in CRM to show you all of your available apps. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're making changes in the correct app. I will say first thing first, though, the number one most important thing you can do when you get into Power Apps is check this little box up in the top corner to make sure that you're working in the right environment. So most folks will have like a sandbox environment that's for testing, a production environment that's your like actual live CRM data. So you want to make sure that you're in your sandbox rather than your production environment, or if you have a development sandbox, stuff like that, just to make sure you're in the right place before you actually go and make any changes.
And I would say this is probably a good time as any to say if you have Dynamics and you follow these steps and you don't have a sandbox, you should
Yeah.
give us a call. We can help you get set up properly. You should have a sandbox to test out changes, even if they're simple changes, just to make sure that you don't inadvertently knock people out of
Yeah.
commission. So just it's really good
Yeah, exactly.
advice.
There, value point number 2, first 2 minutes here.
Yeah, there you
Okay, so the first thing that I want to do, I'm talking about making changes to I'm just going to go here to the left-hand side and choose apps so I can see the entire list of all the apps that I have.
So, Bryn, you're on this list, and I see there's a bunch of different apps. Most customers, though, will only see
Yeah.
one or two apps, I have to
Yes,
imagine, right?
exactly. At most,
Yeah.
probably two, at least when you're first starting out. So I'm going to go ahead and open the app that we're going to be using today, which is our Sales Hub app.
And that is the default app for most people that use
It
dynamic
is the
sales.
default. Typically, we recommend using a custom app just so you have a little bit more control over it. Again, if you've got questions about that, definitely feel free to reach out. But I'm going to use, just for the simplicity today, the Sales Hub app just to make our first round of customizations.
I think you just stepped over value
Okay,
point three,
value
Bryn.
point
So
3, custom apps, definitely
use a
recommended. Yeah.
yeah, perfect. Okay, so now we're in this form. So you're going to pick this account. So we're going to go to accounts. We're going to pick the right form that we were
Yes.
on.
So we are going to look at, let's say I open up our Coho Winery. Sounds good on a Thursday afternoon. So I'm going to
Sure.
open up our actual account. You can see this is like a live view of my actual data that I have in my system. So we have our populated fields. You can see it's super busy. I can squeeze this guy in and give us a little more space, but super busy in here. We have a fax field that is super ugly. So I'm going to go, you can see the field that is selected is actually going to be highlighted right over here on the side. So that's how I know which form I'm using in the system. One of the things about the default app that we mentioned is that there's a ton of forms. You can see them all here listed that are available out of the box. You want to pick one in your own custom app. You'll just point directly to one. That's one of the reasons that we mentioned it's a nice thing to just have a custom app, but this will show you directly which app or which form we're going to go into edit.
So let's take a
Yeah.
moment here just to explain for people who might be not fully versed with all the terminology that Microsoft uses. A form is basically the layout of the fields on the screens and these different little boxes like address box, detail box, timeline. And you can have actually multiple forms. So in your environment, you might have a form for a prospect versus a form for a customer versus a form for a supplier. And so it can be very handy that you can have different forms for different purposes that you want to achieve. You can also, and Brynn, tell me if I'm wrong, but you can have different forms for different people in your company.
Yes.
So like the customer service rep might not need to see all the same information that the lead qualification person has or the sales rep has or the manager
Yes, exactly.
has.
And you can tie those to different security roles. So if I say, like, I want all of my sales team to see this specific form and I want customer service to be looking at this, because you're right. One of the most important things when we talk about streamlining our forms, right, like making sure that this screen is useful to people, is to really keep it locked down to those fields that we know that our team is going to use, that they're going to interact with, that they're going to see when there's data missing, that they're going to get kind of all of those points together. And if you have a form that just, you scroll for days, right? And it's got just tons of information on it. It can be really overwhelming to people.
Yeah.
So kind of being able to focus, if you've got really different needs for somebody like a customer service team versus a sales team, you might want to have 2 forms. If you don't have that level of complexity though, and we just want to put some different rules on like, see this field if you're customer service or not if you're not. Usually I like to try to keep it to 1 form as much as possible, unless there's like a specific use case that, we really need that, or we're going to be scrolling for days on those forms.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And just to paraphrase it from my own dumb salesperson perspective, when I talk to customers, I always say, one of the things that we all struggle with these days is there's so much information out there. There's so much data we're collecting about our accounts, our opportunities. But to make life easier for sellers and service people, only show them what they need to see to do their job. And so by getting rid of those scrolling pages of fields that you don't care about, as Brynn was mentioning, it makes it easier for your sellers to learn the system, to use the system, to get value from the system, which increases adoption, which then increases the return on investment that you make in CRM. So many companies out there have screens with hundreds and hundreds of fields. We see this a lot with Salesforce, where customers will come to us with these massive screens that just never ending data fields. And it's overwhelming to your salespeople and your service people. So take advantage of what Microsoft offers with these forms and these dynamic configurations of forms to show people just what they need to see to do their job.
Exactly. Could not agree more. I think that's the main thing that we talk about when we're just first getting into making changes in our system, is you really want to make sure that CRM fits your company and not the other way around. Like, we don't want you changing any processes, trying to like adapt to what's on the screen here because that's how it came out of the box. You really want to be thinking about like, what do I need? What do I want to see here? What does my team want to see? What do we need to have? And then just adapt the system, right, to fit your organization best.
That's such a good point. And just kind of riffing off that a little bit, the thing is, in the old days, to do that, to adapt the system to your needs used to be expensive and time consuming, and you had to hire these specialized consultants like Azamba. But nowadays with Microsoft, most of what you do is drag and drop and configuration. So it's really easy to do these things and adapt the system to your needs. So do it and take advantage of the power of it. And in fact, let's do that. Let's just jump right in this now and let's get rid of that fax field. I know let's just show how easy it is.
It's just there irking you. So let's go ahead and
that faxes. I never liked them even when I had to send them.
It's bringing back bad memories. All right.
It's like a sore spot.
So I don't want to trigger you. So we'll go ahead and hit our little crayon. Couldn't be easier, right? Crayon, we want to edit this form that we're looking at here. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to open for me in a brand new little window. And one of the things that I'm so excited about, that I love this interface for, is it literally is, and in the old days, you're right, it used to show a much different view. This area where we're kind of editing, changing these fields looks exactly like our front end. So there's no kind of guesswork about, if I'm modifying anything back here. I see this just as clearly on the back end as I do on the front end.
That is really nice. What you see is what you get. I should trademark that.
There you go. Good luck. I'm going to go ahead and select the fax field that Peter loves so much. And I can see now that I've selected it, I get some options over here if I wanted to make any edits to it. I don't want to make any edits to it. I just don't want to see it anymore. So I'm in.
Actually,
go ahead.
Before you move on, let's look at some of these options. So I could actually change the label if I wanted. In theory, I could maybe make that a different phone number, like their home phone or something, or I could just leave the data field intact, but just change the label on the screen. You could,
exactly.
But then the behind the scenes, it would still say fax. So I just had to remember that for reporting.
Yeah, you would. The backend name. So if you're ever doing any more advanced customizations with things like JavaScript, you would still want to point to that fax field. So typically I'd recommend, I typically would recommend we just probably create a new field if you want to capture something like a business phone, so that we know, we're not having to have that memory in our heads, or somebody else on our team is going in to make these edits in the system and they don't have that memory because they didn't, create or edit the field, just to make things as easy as possible.
So I'm just going to go down here, down the list. So hide label, that's pretty obvious. I don't really know a purpose for that unless it was like maybe address 1 and address 2. You don't need the address 2 on the line 2 because it's obvious it's an address line 2. That's probably a good example for that. Hide on phone is really cool because you have less room on your phone, so only show the essential things in your phones. I know as a seller, when I'm out on the field and I know we've optimized ours for our phone use. it's really nice because I don't have to sift through all the different
Right.
fields.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you're on your phone. You're right. You're in your car, you're scrolling. The view gets optimized by kind of pushing everything into a single column. So if you've got 30, 40 fields or something on an account form, you're going to be scrolling for quite a while if they're not relevant, right? We want to make sure that you hide them for the best
Yeah.
mobile experience.
Then you can hide the field completely. So the data is still there, so it could be used to probably trigger other things. Like if it's a prospect, then show this, but the field's on the screen, it's just hidden, but it can still be used for like programming, I would assume, or like.
Yes, so you can hide it for a couple of reasons. For instance, you might want to hide it. The data is still there. It's just not visible here on the form. Incidentally, if you do delete the field from the form, like if I hit delete up here at the top to get rid of that fax field forever, you're not actually deleting the data that's in it. So you're still going to be preserving all the data that was ever entered that field. We're literally just, delete is kind of a misnomer because we're not deleting it from the system. We're deleting it from this specific form.
Yeah, that makes sense. And hiding it, it's still in the form, it's just you can't see it, but deleting it means it's not in the form. Why would you do that? Just like I said, it's like if you wanted to use the data in there to dynamically display some other field, it would.
Yeah, exactly. And I can also build rules about this. This is getting a little bit more customized, but I could build rules and say, if fax number is checked as a potential communication method, then show the fax number fields. We don't see it for everybody. We only see it in a very specific situation where something is telling us, we want to show this field, yes or no, so that we're only seeing the fields that are going to have data populated in them. They're useful for our team. We can direct folks that way, but we don't want to see it necessarily for everybody. We can hide it by default and then just have a rule to show it later.
That makes a lot of sense. And then lock, I know there's a lot of times you want to lock a field. So basically display it, but then you don't have to worry about someone like me going in and accidentally changing an important piece of data, but I can still see it.
Yeah, stuff like, especially when we have things like accounting integrations and you've got like an account number or payment term, things that you want to make sure that not everybody is just kind of going in and changing by accident. You can lock those for everybody. You can lock them for specific users. So there's a lot of use cases there for that.
So actually, Brynn, this is kind of confusing. What's the difference between lock and read only?
Yes. So read only is going to be, you're not able to edit the data that's in that column. It's just set to read only. Whereas lock, like I'm locking it for specific users. Like I'm saying, Peter cannot edit this field, and I'll put some security around that later in the back end.
So lock could be used to choose, some users can modify it, but read only is no one can modify it.
So, well, not no one. Admins will always be able to. You can't turn any options off, any access off for an admin user. So if you're a system customizer, if you are a system administrator, there is no field that you cannot access, read, or edit.
Got it. The next options, I don't really think we need to get into, but basically you can choose certain fields to take up multiple columns. This grid itself, though, this section is only a single column, so that doesn't apply, but you can make multi-column sections. So if you wanted to have a field span, like, for example, a company name might take up more space than a phone number and an email address. So the company name might span multiple columns.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. This was very informative already. So let's just go ahead and nuke that field.
So up at the top, again, I'm not deleting this field forever. It still exists in the system. All our data is still in it. I just don't want to look at it ever again. So I'm going to take it right off our form. So it's gone forever now. Do you feel better?
What's funny is that as you click the delete, it actually triggered the hide column. So is it actually removed from this form, or is it just hidden?
It's still over. It'll be here on my left-hand side now. You can see on this left-hand side panel, which we haven't talked about yet. This is all of the fields that are currently in the system, or all the columns is the new Microsoft language for that. But all of the available columns that you have on the account table. So I could drag, drop them over. You can see now if I search for fax, it's still available. So if I wanted to double click or drag it right on over, the fax field will be right back with us, but it is not going to be here on the front end.
Let's do that with the fax field, even though we don't want it on there. Just show people how easy it is to get a field back on a form now. So like, let's say you found the fax, or let's say you had something in there like the accounting ID or some other field or piece of data that you want to see on your form, how do you bring it back
Yep.
over to the
So
form?
I can either just select the field, like I want to see facts underneath here. So I can just select it, double click. There it is, right back on the form. I can also drag drop. So if I want to say like address 1 facts, let's say I want to see this here, drag drop that right over, and there it is. So it's really just that easy. Yeah.
Pretty easy. Pretty easy. Okay, let's
Yeah.
get rid of those
You
two
got it.
fields. And I have another
Sure.
question for you. So I want to make that account screen take up the full width of the screen. How do I do
You mean this
that?
account information box here?
Yeah, that
Mhm.
section, that
Yes.
box.
So what we would want to do for that, we want to kind of get rid of these guys and have them sorted underneath. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
nice view when you're kind of going through and scrolling. So there's a couple ways that you can do that. If we were building a brand new form from scratch, we could just say, I want this to be one straight across section. Because we're working in an existing form, we're not doing that. We have to make a couple of tweaks. So I'm going to
Okay.
select, actually, there's like a hidden box here. So you see when I click that and it outlines this entire purple section, this is my main body of my entire form.
Okay.
You can see right now the default, it is set to 3 columns. So it's going to give me 1, 2, 3 all in a row. Basically what we're talking about is instead of being set to 3 columns, we just want to set it to 1. So I am going to, before I do that, one more thing I want to do is if I want to preserve these existing sections,
Drag them over to the
I'm going to
first
drag
column.
them over here just so that they're in the first column, so that they don't get deleted. And if they did get deleted, I'd have to just go in and add them again, but this is going to save me that time. So
Yeah, and if you don't mind, can we make it a 2-column format? I like the 2-column, and you know me, I like the double wide first column and then the third wide
So
single
we've set
column
to
or
2.
far right
And
column.
then now to your point, right, if we want to see this left-hand column be a lot wider and kind of push over so we see more of our field data in there, I can set this to whatever I want. I can say maybe 75. Well, let's say 70. Say 70. It'll auto adjust
30.
that
So
bottom, but I'll go ahead and set this to 30.
that's really cool. Now, the internal form that you're working on, it's really constrained because it's inside of the designer here. But is this what the final form would look like?
It is. So if I hit publish right now, this is exactly what's going to show up on my front end. There's probably a couple of tweaks. Like I'm going to move this up next box back over on the right. And any section.
And I'd move the address.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, let's move the address under the up next because addresses don't really take up that much space, honestly.
And
usually.
Timeline, we like to give, here's another tip, another pro tip. We like to give a lot of real estate to something like Timeline because that's where your team is going to be tracking all of their activities, their emails, scrolling through to see, different interactions with customers. So if you've got it over here on the right-hand side, that's very small, it's going to feel like very squashed. You're going to have a lot of like squinting at the screen. So giving Timeline a lot of real estate is something that I really like to do.
Yeah. In fact, even just a tip for those of you listening. So in our environment, we actually have a separate tab for the timeline. So we can give it a lot more room. We can use the filters a lot easier, and we can see all the data and get to the bottom of things real fast.
Then I think one other change that I want to make, this is a personal pet peeve of mine, but you can see how Timeline is here in like our nice little lowercase. And then you have like the account information tab is just really announcing itself very loudly at the top of the page. So what you can do is if you actually just select that box, so not the individual field inside it, but the section itself, you can see I get a lot of those same options that I had for fields here on the right-hand side. So I'm just going to rename this guy account information, just quieter.
Yeah, this is a small little touch, but like a lot of these little touches makes your system more useful to your people. So I think I'm glad you brought that up.
We'll do address too.
Yeah, it just looks a little bit nicer
when
now.
Things are matching.
Yeah. And what's interesting, I'm glad you clicked that too, because look at that. You can actually hide the label altogether on those boxes. And you could even hide the entire section on the phone. So if you had a section of nice to know data, but it's not essential data, you could save yourself a lot of space and real estate and frustrations on the phone by hiding that whole section.
Yes, you could. And that's a lot easier too, as in terms of being like a back-end admin user. It's a lot easier, right, to go in and click one time to hide a section than it is to go through and individually hide 15 fields, maybe in the same section. So that is something that's nice from a user perspective on the back end as well as the front end.
It's funny. It brings up another point. Like a lot of these discussions just they're like threads of a sweater. They all tie together. But I've seen companies that will have like 50 fields in the account information box, and really take a few moments to maybe organize your data a little bit more structured. And it helps people think in terms of hierarchies of what data is relevant to what information. So like for our system, we've got a lot of fields on our system. It's grown over time. We started basic, like we tell our customers to do, start simple and then build upon that. But we've got a section for account information, but then we also have a section for relationships. So for us, we do a lot of partner to partner business. So relationship management is really key. So we have a whole section of relationship information. And there's some people in the company that don't even care about that. So we can hide it for them. And there's other people that it's really important, like me. And so I look at that almost more than I look at the account information. So,
and I will never look at it. So, I mean, I'll look at it very rarely. So it's a really good example.
So organize your data, structure it a little bit better. It'll make your system that much more useful. And one of the number one things that we see our customers struggle with is adoption. So we have a bunch of tips and tricks and best practices that we like to share. In fact, why don't you subscribe now to stay up on top of these things? But we like to share these tips about adoption, because at the end of the day, if your people start to use the system and it's easy to use and they get value out of it, then management goals get met pretty fast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a nice thing too to have a system that's really responsive, and it is easy to jump in the back and make changes, because if you have a team that is actively using the system, right, you're going to get a lot of feedback. Like the goal really is to get a lot of feedback from your users. And when they have no system is perfect, especially not the first draft of anything. Like nothing's going to be perfect right out the gate. But if you have a team that you can, capture early, get them engaged, get a good adoption going, you're going to get a lot of feedback. And that's what we want. Because you want people to be saying like, oh, it doesn't have this, or, I want it to have that, or can it have a field that captures this information? Then it's really easy for our admins or for us, right, to jump in the back end and kind of make those changes really quickly, get that in front of them. And then, the more times that you repeat that process, the better the system is for everybody and the better for your team for sure.
I think it's a little bit of a detour here, but all these things are tied together. And we have a whole series on CRM adoption strategies. One of the fundamental principles that we preach is crawl, walk, run. So to Brynn's point, what you want to do is start with the smallest footprint possible that still has value to your team and get them using it as soon as possible and giving their feedback. Go into it knowing that the system's not perfect, and that will help them understand that they're part of the equation, not just being force-fed a system. And so you'll get real world feedback, and they'll tell you what things that they need to do their job better with CRM. And it's like that. That's a pretty fundamental philosophy that we follow. Say that fast 10 times, Brynn.
Fundamental philosophy that we follow. I'll write that down for later.
Yeah, but definitely, like I see a lot of consulting companies out there still trying to do what we call the big bang approach, where they will talk to you about all your needs, the things that you can barely even imagine, and they'll try to go build this perfect system. In our opinion, there is no perfect system. The perfect system is the system that costs you the least amount of money, that delivers a lot of value to you, and will adapt to meet your needs. Like that's the definition of a perfect system. And Dynamics can do that for you. Just don't go out in front of your skis too much. Just get the basics in, start using it, get the feedback, iterate, change. What we're showing you today is really simple stuff. And if you need help with it, definitely give us a call. But it's so easy now with Dynamics to configure your screens and adapt the system to your needs.
Absolutely. I think the perfect system is the one that your team will use, right? So that's the most important thing. Let's really get them something that they can use right out of the gate and that they can feel some ownership of as well, so that it's a team project, not, like you said, kind of, here's your CRM, take it or leave it.
It's bringing a tear to my eye, Brynn, all this team spirit.
Sounds good.
Not to be confused with Teen Spirit, which I think was a Nirvana
before
song.
My time. I've never heard of them.
Really? That's weird. Anyway, so what else do you want? Is there anything else you want to show me? I think that we covered a lot of ground here. But
we did. Do you want to walk through maybe adding like that relationship type field that you talked about?
Yeah, why don't we go ahead? Well, I mean, we did add back the facts field, but can we add a whole section here?
Yeah.
Like, let's add a section for relationship, and maybe put source in there and relationship type.
So to add a section, I'm actually going to go right back up to the top. There we go. And a section is in our components. So I'm going to say my components here. It's going to give me a list of all the different things that I can add sort of formatting wise here on the left-hand side. Go ahead and say that. And I am going to add let's say a 1-column, let's say a 2-column section. Maybe we've got a couple different fields in there. Again, I can drag, drop. I can also just double click and it'll add it here to my form. Oh, it added it under my timeline, which is not ideal because timeline will expand. So I'm going to drag that up top. And then I'm going to call this my relationship.
Yep.
Great. And let's put a couple of fields in here that we can capture for.
I mean, because it's just an example, can we add in? Oh, by the way, it looks like it changed the actual form name, not the,
Oops.
Put that back to. But when you're ready, let's add in maybe just relationship type and maybe
type and source. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my fields here. We'll go ahead and say form field up at the top. It's going to pull open this probably familiar looking panel by now. And I'll say I can search.
So that's a list of all the fields on my
So I could just kind of scroll through. There's an awful lot of them. I could scroll through. I know what I'm looking for though. So I'm just going to type in that relationship type. I'll just double click on it so it goes into my section. And then source we want to add as well. There it is. I'll drag this guy over.
Because you made that a 2-column, it's going to, will it automatically put it over there, or will you need to tell it to go to the side?
You'll need to tell it. So I can just drag drop it right back over to the side.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah, and it'll move right over there. All right, that's it.
So now we have
that
was it. It's that easy. So the top box, what do they call sections? The top section, that's account information. Is it automatically a 2-column? Like if I wanted to put website next to phone, would it allow me to do that? Or do I need to change
You'll need to change the type, because this one specifically, you can see when I click the website field, how it goes all the way across. That's how I know. I can also look over here on the right-hand side, but it's a giveaway, right? That this is a 1-column versus if I click on relationship type, it's just that half length box. But
I see.
Do we want to?
Can you switch the account information to a 2-column?
So I'm going to select the section, right, that it's in. I'm going to go over here onto the right-hand side, and I'm going to make this 2 columns instead of 1.
Oh, that's easy.
That's it. So now there's 2 columns here. These are all by default going to be set to be a 1-column. But if I want something, say like my account name might be longer, right? So instead of having this take up just 1 column on the left-hand side only, I can change this to 2, and it's going to expand across that whole first line again.
Nice. And if you don't mind, let's put ticker symbol, the important ticker symbol that Microsoft defaults in, up next to phone.
Let's drag that on over underneath our account name. Whoop, it's moved it. We'll move it next door. My drags and my drops.
It's dragging, but it's not dropping. I hate when that happens.
We'll put it over here. Well, you get the general idea.
We get the general idea. And despite a little bit of a technical difficulty here, you can do that. This was the one thing that was easier in the old days, because it was like it was a clunky grid aligned form. This is a much better experience for the most part, but in general, just like Brynn showed you with the relationship section, you can drag, like where she dragged source next to relationship type. You can do it. It might take a little bit of finessing, but it's definitely doable. Well, I think this is probably a good place to end this, Brynn. I might have follow-ups, and definitely for all of you who are watching this, if you have questions, like Brynn said, drop it in the comments below if you want to know a little bit more details about something, or hit us up on LinkedIn. We're a pretty accessible group. You can look for Azamba, our company, and follow us there. We're dropping new videos on a pretty regular basis. So if you have ideas about videos that you want to see, please let us know. We want to share our knowledge with you so that you can use Dynamics to take your business to new heights. So, Brynn, you got anything else to add?
I think that was perfect. Thanks for spending some time walking through this together.
I mean, I learned a lot. Hopefully the people watching learned a lot too. So thank you very much, Brynn.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.